All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Hoekstra here, working on Module 2, Lesson 4, Efficiently Adding Integers and Other Rational Numbers. I'm on page 25 of our book. You'll notice the essential question is already in there for you. I have, what are the rules for adding numbers with opposite signs? What are the rules for adding numbers with opposite signs? By the time we're done with this lesson, you should have 2 rules written down. All right, and we're going to make sure we get those really well. All right, example 1. Rule for adding integers with same signs. Notice it says the same sign, right? Let's in fact underline that, because now we're just talking about things that have the same sign. All right, represent the sum of 3 and 5 using arrows on the number line. This should go pretty fast for us, right? So we're going to go 0 to 3, and then add another 5 to that. 3 plus 5 brings us to 8, right? How long is the arrow that represents the 3? Well, it's 3 units, right? That first one was 3 units. And what direction did it go? Well, we went to the right. Yeah. How long was the second arrow? The one that represents 5? Well, it was 5 units. And what direction did it go? It went to the right. So since they were both to the right, we just kept adding, right? What is the sum? Well, what is 3 plus 5? You learned that back in elementary school. The answer was 8, right? If you were to represent the sum using an arrow, how long would the arrow be and in what direction would it point? Well, our arrow would be 8, right? And it's going to point to the right because everything went to the right. The arrow would be 8 units, would be 8 units long, and point to the right. Everything I did was pointing to the right, so my answer is going to be the right. All right, what is the relationship between the arrow representing the number on the number line and the absolute value? The length of the arrow and the absolute value are going to both be the same, right? The length of the arrow is the same as the absolute value. It's the same. Okay? So the arrow length and the absolute value, they're both the same, right? The arrow was 8 units, and the absolute value is also 8. They're the same. Okay? Do you think that adding 2 positive numbers will always give you a greater positive number? Yeah, you've been doing this for a long time, right? A positive number plus another positive number equals an even more positive number, right? It's going to be more positive. It's going to be bigger. It's kind of how math has worked pretty much your whole entire lives until you started working with these integers, right? All right, page 26. Keep going. This time, though, we're looking at -3 plus -5. So again, we're going to work with -3 and -5. Start at 0, go -3. How long is that arrow? It's 3 units. What direction did it point? It went to the left. All right, from there, we're going to add -5. Add 5 more, right? This next arrow was 5 units as well as the last time, but this time it went to the left. And what is our sum? What did we get? Yeah, we got -8. There it is. The sum is -8. If you were to represent the sum using an arrow, how long would the arrow be? And in what direction would it point? The arrow would be 8 units, right? The arrow would be 8 units. And it's going to point to the left, right? Because we had 2 negative numbers. So do you think adding 2 negative numbers will always give you a smaller negative answer? Yes, it will. Okay, it's going to give you a more negative answers. Okay, so the absolute value, I'm going to abbreviate absolute, okay? Absolute value of their sum, the absolute value of their sum is greater but because of the negative, right, because of those negative signs, the answer becomes smaller. So what I'm referring to is 3 plus 5, yeah, that's a bigger number. I get 8, it's a bigger number. But because of that negative with it, now it becomes the opposite, what, right? It becomes smaller. The bigger the number with a negative, the smaller the number actually is, okay? What do both examples have in common? Well, they both were adding with the same sign, hence the reason it said at the beginning of the section here of this exercise, right? They both added with the same sign, so you just add and keep the sign, okay? They both added numbers with the same sign. And when we added numbers with the same sign, then just add and keep the same sign, right? If they're both positive, it stays positive. If they're both negative, they stay negative, okay? So here's the key to this, all right? Here's the rule. I'm going to put a star by it. Whoop, maybe. Where's my star tool? There's my star tool. There, I put a nice star there. You guys put a star on there. Okay, put a star, smiley face. Do something so that this jumps out at you. Because remember, we have 2 rules. Here's rule number 1. Adding the absolute value, right? When they have the same sign, let's go back. Add rational numbers with the same sign. Underline, highlight. Do something so that jumps out at you. What do? You're going to add by adding the absolute value and using the same sign. Right? A positive plus a positive is going to be a positive. A negative plus a negative is going to be a negative. All right, let's give it a try. Let's put this into action here on the next page. All right, exercise 2, we're going to do a couple of these together. So decide whether the sum will be positive or negative without actually calculating. We don't care what the answer is. I just want to know, will my answer be positive or will my answer be negative? Well, you notice I have a negative plus a negative. So my answer is going to be negative. All right, take a look at number 2. 5 plus 9. Well, 5 is a positive number, and I'm going to add it to another positive number. So I'm going to have a positive answer. Take a look at 3. What do I have? I have a negative, right? Negative 6 plus a negative 3. So what kind of answer will I get? I'm going to get a negative answer. All right, I want you to try the next 3 on your own. All right, I will just wait here quietly while you do those. You don't have to hit pause. Just go ahead and do those right now. All right, so the 4th one, did you get a negative answer? Right, a negative plus a negative gives me a more negative. Ooh, that 5th one, I gave you 3 numbers. They're all positive. So what kind of answer should I get? Yep, I better get a positive answer. And then the last one, what kind of answer should I get? Negative plus a negative? I should have an even more negative answer. All right, now for part B, it says to actually find the sum, actually do the math. right? Do the math. So 15 plus 7, I can do that. I've been doing that for, forever. That's 22, right? Now, the next one, -4 plus -16. What they're telling you to do is to actually just add those, right? 4 plus 16. I don't care that those were both negative. The absolute value of these numbers. What's 4 plus 16? It's 20. And then just take that negative that's with it and bring it along. Okay? So just look at it. They're both negative. What do? That third one there, they're both negative. So what you're going to do really is you're just going to add 18 plus 64. You're just going to add those and bring the negative out front, right? That negative comes out front. 18 plus 64 is 82. And because there's that negative out front, it stays there. All right, -205 plus -123. So negative, and then you just add the two numbers. And you should get -328, right? -328. All righty, let's go to page 28. Example tool. Rule for adding opposite signs. Underline, circle, highlight. Do something so that we catch that the signs are opposites. So now I'm referring to one's positive, one's negative, or the one's negative and the other one's positive, okay? They're going to be opposites. All right, so let's add, it says 5 plus -3. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to add 5, right? How long is that arrow? It's 5 units. Which direction did it go? It went to the right. But now from there, I'm going to go -3. 1, 2, 3, right there. So how long is that arrow? It's 3 units. But what direction did I go? I went left. Which arrow is longer? Which arrow was longer? Well, the +5 arrow, right? The +5 arrow is longer. Okay, and then what did I get for my answer? Where did I end up? I ended up here at 2, right? So my answer is 2. If you were to represent the sum using an arrow, how long would the arrow be? And in what direction would it point? It's going to be 2 units, right? It's going to be 2 units to the right of 0. Okay, we're going to have that as 0 as our reference point. By the way, go back up to the top. Which number was bigger? What's bigger, 5 or 3? Don't even worry about the positive, negative part of it. What's bigger, 5 or 3? 5's bigger, right? Circle it. 5's the bigger number. If we were playing tug of war, 5's going to beat 3. Okay? So in this tug of war, 5 is positive. It's going to win, pulling that -3 over into the positive side. Okay? Now the next one says represent 4 plus -7 using arrows. Okay, so I'm going to start at 0. I'm going to go 4, right? Then I'm going to go and add -7. So I'm going to go negative or left 7 over to here, right? There it is. I went over 4, and then I had a -7. Well, which digit was bigger, 4 or -7? Well, -7 was bigger, right? 7 is bigger than 4. Don't even care if it's positive or negative. 7's bigger. So in a tug of war, it's going to pull it more into the negatives. Okay? Where did I end up? I ended up at -3. Okay? So in other words, 4 plus -7 equals -3. I'm going to drop down to that to the last question here on this page. What is the relationship between the direction of the arrow representing the sum and the direction of the arrows representing the two add-ins? The length of the arrow of your sum, right, of our answer is the difference of the absolute values. The direction of the longer arrow determines the direction of the sum. Okay? So let's write all that down. The length of the arrow the length of the arrow of the sum, aka the answer, right? The length of the arrow of the sum is the difference. Underline that word. In math, what's the word difference mean? It means you're going to subtract. Okay, it is the difference of the absolute values. Again, I'm going to just abbreviate absolute value. It's the sum, or the difference of the absolute values of the terms, right? Of the numbers I was just adding. The direction of the longer arrow. The direction of the longer arrow determines the direction of the sum. So I had you circling the bigger numbers, right? I had you circling those bigger numbers because that's going to ultimately give me an idea of what's going to happen. -7 got circled. What do you notice about my answer? It has a negative. Go back to the very top one. 5 got circled because it's the bigger number. What do you notice? If I wrote out 5 plus -3, we said the answer was 2 because 5 is a positive number and 2 is a positive answer. The bigger number determines that. All right. Top of page 29. Top of page 29. There's the rule there. Aha, put a star. Put a smiley face. Highlight this. Make it jump out at you. Do something in your notes so that you know this is important. Okay? Add rational numbers with opposite signs. Underline, highlight, circle. Do something so that the words opposite signs jumps out at you. Okay? When we have opposite signs, you're going to actually subtract. You're going to subtract the absolute values. You're going to subtract the absolute values and use the sign of the larger or greater value of the, we'll say greater value. Okay, so let's take a look at exercise 3. Usually I have you guys do these on your own. Today I feel like I want to make sure we know what we're doing. Okay, so circle the integer with the greater absolute value. So don't worry about positives and negatives, but what's bigger, 1 or 2? Well, yeah, 2, right? So circle the greater value. Decide whether the sum will be positive or negative. We're not calculating it. Well, since 2 is bigger than 1, or 2 is bigger than -1 in this case, I know I'm going to have a positive answer. Okay, try number 2. Circle the larger one. What's bigger, 5 or 9? Don't worry about the negative. What's bigger, 5 or 9? 9's bigger. So since 9 is bigger and it's a negative, I know I'm going to have a negative answer. Don't know what the answer is right now, don't care. I just know it's going to be negative. So you try the next 2. I'll give you guys a couple seconds. Don't have to worry about hitting pause. All right, so I circled -6 and I get a negative. And the next one I circle -11 and I get a negative. All right, part B now, we're actually going to do the work. Okay, so again, we're going to set it up the same way we just did these a second ago. Circle the larger number. What's larger, 10 or 7? Well, 10's bigger than 7, so I'm going to circle that. So what kind of answer will I get? I better get a negative answer. Now, what the directions say at the top of the page, in that rule that we put a star by, right, it says take the absolute value and subtract 10 minus 7. We're going to subtract those. 10 minus 7 is how much? That's 3. And take the sign of the bigger number, negative. Okay, let's try it again. So this next one, which one's bigger, 8 or 16? 16 is bigger than 8. So I'm going to circle the bigger one, the one that has more value, the one that's, heavier or whatever, however you want to think of it. I'm going to subtract them, and you can subtract them 16 minus 8. I can flip the order of it, make my life easier. 16 minus 8 is 8, and I use the sign of the bigger number, negative. All right, let's try this next one. Negative 12 plus 65. What's bigger, the 12 or the 65? Circle the bigger number. Subtract them. So I'm going to subtract 65 minus 12. 65 minus 12 is 53, and use the sign of the bigger number. I can put a positive there, or you can just write it as just plain old everyday 53. We don't have to put the positive there. All right, I want you to do the next one on your own. I will pause and wait for you. All right, I'm going to circle the negative 126 because 126 is bigger than 105. So I'm going to take 126 and subtract 105. I get 21. And since my bigger number is negative, I put a negative out front. Negative 21 for my answer. Did you get it? Did you? Did you? All right, next page. Here we go. Example 3, applying integer addition rules to rational numbers. So now we're not working with whole numbers. Now we're going to put in our favorite, fractions. Oh, this is just the best. Okay, so here we go. Find the sum of 6 plus negative 1/4. Okay, the addition of rational numbers follows the same rules. So the rules we just had a minute ago, gonna work again. All right, so if I said, what's the absolute value of 6? Well, it's 6. And what's the absolute value of negative 2 1/4? Well, it's 2 1/4, 2 1/4, right? No big deal there. It says subtract those values because remember, we're gonna take the, we're gonna subtract those. So we're gonna take 6 and subtract 2 1/4. And I know you guys are all panicking. You can't use a calculator, remember that. Okay, so here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna do 6 minus 2. I know you can do that one. 6 minus 2 is what? 4. I still have to do that 1/4, right? Haven't dealt with it yet. Bring the 1/4 down here, and we're going to now subtract 1/4. Okay, now I'm going to subtract 1/4. So you have $4, and I take away 25 cents. How much do you have? You have $3.03. Especially if you say 1/4 is quarters. Now all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I had $4, she took away a quarter. I now have $3.03. There you go. All right, but which number was bigger at the top? 6 or negative 2 1/4? Well, 6 is bigger, so my answer should be positive, right? I should have a positive answer, and my answer should be 3 3/4. Fractions are your friends. All right. Guess what I want you to do? This time, yes, you are going to pause the video. I want you to do parts A and B. I will do part C with you on the next page. So go ahead, hit pause, try parts A and B. All right, check your answers with mine. I have negative 11 for part A, and I got positive 54 degrees for part B. Again, I didn't put the positive there, but if you did, that's fine. I'm just too lazy to do it. It's too much work. All right, last part. I said I would do C with you. Write an addition sentence and find the sum using the diagram below. So now I got to look at my arrows. Remember, you always start with a number that starts at 0. So what starts at 0? It's the negative 10, right? Negative 10. Where's negative 10 end? Yep, that's where that one started. And I'm going to add 3.5, right? I'm going to add 3.5 to that. All right, where does that end? Where is that answer? It doesn't end in a nice spot. We're going to actually have to do the math. All right, so circle the bigger number, negative 10. Now I'm going to take the absolute value. All I'm going to do, guys, I'm just going to take 10 minus 3, okay? And I get what? I get 7, right? And then I'm going to take away another half because I still have to subtract that half yet. I've still got to take that difference. I got to subtract half. So again, think of it this way. You have $7 and I take away 50 cents. How much do you have left? You have 6.5 left. The sign is going to be what? Negative. Does that make sense to what I have drawn here? Does 6.5, does that look like negative 6.5 to you? Looks like negative 6.5 to me. All right, that's all. I know this was a long one, but good job today. Ask questions in class tomorrow if you have any for me. Have a great rest of your day.